Hi everyone. For this week, we'll give an overview of AI, in particular, supervised versus unsupervised learning. And you can find a reference of the lecture video here. And here's the outline. First, as a recap, we'll talk about the relation between artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning. And then we'll talk about what is supervised learning and what is unsupervised learning. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is the science of training machines to perform human tasks, such as to understand human speech. That's how you can talk to your Siri. Or to do pattern or image recognition. Or to play strategic games such as Go or chess. You've probably heard of AlphaGo or Deep Blue. Or to drive cars without human being, like those self-driving cars we've been talking about these days. And AI is an old idea since the 50s, when people started to imagine what computers could do. Machine learning, on the other hand, is a subfield of AI which trains machines how to learn from data without being explicitly programmed. So a typical machine learning life cycle could be like this. First, you ask questions about the problem you wish to solve. And then you collect data. And then you use the data to train your algorithm and try it on new data. And you check the performance of your algorithm and use that as a feedback to improve or retrain your algorithm until you can solve your question. And that's a typical machine learning cycle. So how to learn from data? We need independent data samples for training, testing, validation, before deploy that to real unknown data. So we can further divide the cycle into the learning phase and deployment phase. During the learning phase, we need training sample to train our algorithm and tune internal parameters. And then we need a different independent data sample as our testing sample to check our performance in an unbiased way. And furthermore, we may need another validation sample to select the best algorithm or to do hyperparameter tuning. So you might start to realize that that's why we name our data sets in our lab session as xtrain, xtest, and xval. So what are the right questions to ask? It definitely depends on the problem you wish to solve. And in this course, we focus on questions in physics. For example, how to tell a signal event from background event in particle experiments. Or what is the true energy of a particle given the measurement made by our detector? Or you look at the sky and you see a lot of stars or astronomical objects. Which stars or objects belong to the same galaxy? Or what kind of galaxy it is? The first question is a task of classification, where we classify our events into signal and background. The second one is a task of regression, where we predict the outcome given our current knowledge of input and output. The third one may be a task of clustering, where we group the stars together according to their similarity. Or it can be a task of dimensional reduction, where we try to find the best way to characterize our stars given all the parameters we use. The task of classification and regression can often be performed by supervised learning, while clustering and dimensional reduction can be achieved via unsupervised learning. So what is supervised and unsupervised learning? Supervised learning is to train with data with the right answer given, or we say the training data is labeled. For example, we can train a boosted decision tree or BDT, that's an AI algorithm, with data labeled as signal and background. And the BDT can learn how to separate the signal from background using other information in the data, such as the energy and momentum of each particle in the event. And if you are successful, the BDT will give you an output that's a number that can make the signal well separated from the background, as shown in the picture here. So in short, classification is to make discrete prediction, signal versus background, true or false. Or it can be multi-classification, like you can classify the stars into type 1 supernovae, type 2 supernovae, and others. Another example of supervised learning is the task of regression, where we make continuous estimation. For example, here you're given the example of energy regression in particle experiments, where a particle with certain true energy will result in certain measured value in the calorimeter. And we can fit the distribution using a line shown in this picture. And we can use the line to predict the true energy of an unknown particle given certain measured value. And that's the task of energy regression. Unsupervised learning, on the other hand, is to train without the right answer given in the data, or we say the data is unlabeled. For example, you make an observation of the sky and you see a picture like this, and you can try to group the stars into different clusters according to their similarities. The groups are not known beforehand, and we need clustering. We need unsupervised learning to perform this clustering task. So unsupervised learning can help us to find the hidden structure of data in order to get meaningful insight, so that we can group them according to their similarity as in the clustering task. Or we can simplify the data by using a lower dimensional or less complex representation, and that's the task of dimensional reduction. For example, if you have a data set that can be described using two parameters x and y, when you plot the distribution on the xy plane, and your data set looks like the red crosses here, and you immediately realize that the xy parameters may not be the best way to characterize the data. So you can use unsupervised learning to find the direction of maximum variation as the x prime axis here. And the x prime axis is called the principal component of the data, which captures the most information from the original x1 parameters. And the rest information can be further described by the y prime, the second principal component. And this is called principal component analysis. And that's an example of dimensional reduction. And one application is we can use that to characterize the galaxies in our sky. For example, here, this is a plot from an astrophysics paper where we can reduce from 14 parameters that are the properties of galaxies into 3 major eigenvectors. And this plot shows you the distribution from 2 out of the 3 major characters or the principal components. And you can see that with these 3 parameters or the 3 principal components, we can successfully see the differences and similarities from the 14 parameters we use to describe our galaxies. So to summarize, machine learning is the field of training machines to perform tasks. And we need to use independent data samples for training, testing, and validation. Depending on the task, it can be roughly categorized into supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Supervised learning is to train with labeled data where the right answer is given, like in the task of classification and regression. Unsupervised learning is to train with unlabeled data where the right answer is not known beforehand, like in the task of clustering or dimensional reduction.